In this section, we'll be doing a somewhat more elaborate example of storage virtual machines and logical volumes. First, we'll create 3 storage virtual machines, and those machines we will keep on using through the rest of this training. Also, we're going to create 1 volume. We're going to resize that volume, so we're going to do stuff that we talked about regarding volumes. So we're going to move it to another aggregate, we're going to rehost it to a different SVM, and we will be renaming the volume. So let's start. So again, I prepared some commands to avoid a distraction from sloppy typing. Let's first have a look at our SVMs. And as we can see, we're in the admin mode and we have no storage virtual machines for data. So then we create 3 storage virtual machines for 3 different protocols, NFS, CIFS, and iSCSI. And we'll be using these SVMs through the rest of this training. So this is what we discussed in the previous section, right? So we create 3 SVMs, and they have their own root volume, and they're all data SVMs. And I created the root volume in node 1 agar 1. Now we're going to create a volume for the NFS storage virtual machine. The junction path will be /data1, size will be 1 gigabyte, aggregate will be node 1 agar 1. So let's do it. And it complains about the export policy. We ignore this. That will be something we discuss later. And then it will have created that particular volume, and the volume it will be online and it will be mounted on /data1. So it's inside the NFS storage virtual machine, and when we look at the junction path, we see that it is mounted on. So it's the NFS, it's the volume is NFS data1, and it's mounted to /data1. So the junction path is data1. So now we will resize the volume to 2 gigabytes, and as you see, we have no clients accessing the volume yet, but they would not notice this. I mean, you can grow a volume on the fly whenever you feel like it. So it's done, set to 2 gigabytes. Let's have a look at it again, and we see that the volume is no longer 1 gig, but now it's 2 gig. Now, the nice thing we can do is we can move the volume from one aggregate to another aggregate, as long as the aggregate is inside the same cluster. So we run a vol move, and we're going to move it from node 1 agar 1 to node 2 agar 1. So we'll move it to a different node. So we move the volume from node 1 agar 1 to node 2 agar 1. And again, this is non-disruptive to clients. And then we do vol show, and it says node 2 agar 1 2 gigabytes. So we've moved the volume non-disruptively from one aggregate to another aggregate. And the junction path obviously is still the same. The volume name is still the same, but the only difference is it's in a different aggregate. Now, to rehost a volume from one vServer to another vServer, we will have to unmount it first. So you cannot rehost a volume which is active in use by clients. So this is disruptive to client's access. When we look at the junction path, we will see that the junction path is no longer there. So we have unmounted the volume. It is still online, but clients will not be able to access it anymore. So now we can move it or rehost it from one storage virtual machine to another storage virtual machine. So let's rehost it to these CIFS. Now it will tell us that when you do this, that you have some things to keep to take into account. An attempt to rehost the volume will dissociate the volume from all policies and rules. So when you've connected policies to the volume, you will have to reconnect policies in the other SVM to that particular volume. So it's definitely not an on-the-fly thing that doesn't affect clients. So when we do a vol show, we see that the volume is rehosted to another SVM. Unfortunately, the naming is no longer very apt, so we are going to rename the volume from NFS data 1 to CIFS data 1 because it's now in the CIFS SVM. Of course, this is arbitrary, but to avoid confusion, we're going to rename the volume. Nobody will be bothered by that. That is another non-disruptive feature, as is vol move. So of all of this, the only thing that is disruptive to your environment is the rehosting of a volume. And we're done.